Hey everyone, and welcome to Year 4 Storytime. We're on part 5 of Michael Morpurgo's The Pied Piper of Hamelin. The mayor looked up at him, a face twisted with scorn and fury. "How dare you speak to me like that?" he spluttered. "Did you really imagine that I would pay you anything? You're no more than a wretched rat catcher in a fancy dress who can whistle a good tune. You're a nobody, you hear me? And you can whistle for your money, rat catcher, for I will pay you not a penny. What can you do? Can you bring the rats back? I don't think so. What's done is done, and you can't undo it, so be off with you." The Pied Piper stood there, looking hard at the mayor. He said nothing. The whole town was wondering what would happen next. I think we all knew that this couldn't be the end of it. The Pied Piper was not going to leave it there. I was right beside him when at long last he spoke up. "Mr. Mayor, I need to be very sure of this. Do I understand that you do not intend to keep your side of the bargain we made, that you are breaking your promise, and that you will not pay me the money that you owe me? Is that correct?" "That's right, rat catcher," the mayor replied haughtily. "But here's a promise I will keep. If you are not out of my sight by the time I walk back up the town hall doors, I promise you I'll set my dogs on you." And with that, he began to climb back up the steps. The councillors followed at his heels. "I shall give you this last chance to pay me one gold coin, Mr. Mayor," the Pied Piper declared. "And if you do not, I promise I will bring more grief to this town than you can possibly imagine. And believe me, unlike you, I am a man who always keeps my promises." The mayor rounded on him. "You will give me, the mayor of Hamelin Town, a chance? You dare threaten me, you miserable rat catcher? I'll show you who rules this town." He turned to his guards. "Unleash the dogs!" he cried. "Let them tear him to pieces." At that very moment, the Pied Piper put his flute to his lips again and began to play. The dogs, already bounding down the steps towards him, were at once frozen in mid-stride. And now I saw that the mayor and his councillors, and the townspeople too, had all suddenly turned rigid where they stood. They couldn't move. It was just as it was before, except for one thing. I could still move. I could move my fingers, my hands, my arms. I expected to find myself paralysed like the others by the Pied Piper's magical music, but I wasn't. When I looked around me, I saw that all the children, poor and rich alike, from tiny tots to teenagers, were all beginning to follow the Pied Piper. Dancing and skipping along, I found myself hobbling after them. The music seemed to seep into my body, and I simply had to follow. I couldn't stop myself. I didn't even want to try. I wanted to go where the music took me and where the Pied Piper led me. I found Emma walking beside me. "Isn't it wonderful?" she said, and it truly was. It was as if he was leading us all by the hand, every one of us, and we knew that wherever we were going, wherever he was taking us, it would be beautiful as his music. As we followed the Pied Piper at the market square, I looked back and saw the mayor and the councillors, all the mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers standing there helpless as statues, quite unable to move. They could only look on in horror as all their children, every single child in Hamelin Town, followed the Pied Piper down the street towards the river. I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep up with the others. Emma kept coming back for me to see if I needed help, but I told her I was doing fine, that I'd just follow the music, keep going and catch up with her later. I never liked anyone fussing over me, not even her. By the time I got to the bridge, though, they had already reached the far side. Recognise that picture from your work? The Pied Piper was a long, long way ahead of me now, leading the way up the hill into the hills beyond. The cavalcade of children skipping and dancing after him, and they were singing too. How I longed to be able to catch up to be with them all. As hard as I tried, I couldn't make my one good leg and my crutch go any faster. I kept going with the music. It drew me steadily on. Where the Pied Piper went, I followed. I hobbled past the rubbish tips on my own, over the bridge and through the shanty town where I had grown up, ever onwards, ever upwards along the rushing river, through farmland and forest. The Pied Piper and the children were so far ahead of me now that I could only catch occasional glimpses of them. But somehow I could still hear the sound of his flute, as loud as ever in my ears. And I knew that all I had to do was follow it. Sooner or later it would bring me to where the rest of them had gone, and everything would be all right. Time and again Emma came back for me, and time and again I told her not to fuss, that I could manage on my own, and I sent her back to join the others. For that whole day and that whole night and into the next dawn, I stumbled on without stopping once. How many miles, I don't know. The valleys and the hills, even the clouds above, seemed to ring with the Pied Piper's music, so weary that I thought my heart would burst. I came out of the forest into a broad green valley. I looked up and saw snow-capped mountains ahead of me, mountains so high and mighty that they touched the clouds. I knew at once that I couldn't possibly make it over those mountains, but the Pied Piper played on, and exhausted as I was, somehow I managed to follow where the music took me. It had been some time since I had seen even a glimpse of the children, but when I did at last catch a sight of them, they were not as far away as I expected. They were all following a sheep track that wound around the mountainside. The Pied Piper was leading the way, and all of them were dancing and singing. Then, as I watched, the strangest thing began to happen. I couldn't believe my eyes. The mountainside itself seemed to be opening, just a crack at first, but then, with a great grinding and groaning, the crack became wider and wider, until there was a gaping black cave in the rock face. As I looked on, astonished and aghast, the children, in their ones and twos, vanished into the mountain, until only the Pied Piper was left. "I'm coming!" I cried out. "Wait for me! Please wait for me! Don't leave me behind!" I waved at him frantically, calling at the top of my voice. He must have heard me or seen me, because he waved back, beckoning me towards him. I staggered on as fast as I could, but the track was tortuous and steep, and my feet felt horribly sore, and my whole being heavy with tiredness. It took me a long while to catch up. I came around the last bend in the sheep track, to see the Pied Piper disappear inside the mountainside, and it closed again before my eyes. By the time I reached the place where the cave had been, there wasn't even the faintest track of a crack to be seen. There was a young spruce tree growing out of a rocky ledge, a single edelweiss beside it, and there, hanging on the branch, was a Pied Piper's silver flute, glinting in the morning sun. I put my mouth against the rock face and shouted for all it was worth, "Open up! Open up! Let me in!" But there was no answer. I was crying my heart out by this time. Again and again I called, but no one replied. I didn't know what to do. But then it came to me that there might be one last chance. I reached up, took his flute off the tree, and put it to my lips and blew, hoping against hope that the magic in the music would open up the mountainside again. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make the sound come out of his flute, not a single note. That was when I first heard the sound of children singing from deep inside the mountain. And then the voice of the Pied Piper himself. "Listen carefully," he said to me, his voice sounding far away and close at the same time. "Don't feel sad. I've chosen you especially as my messenger. I need to have someone who can play my flute when the time is right." "What time? What do you mean? What time?" I asked him. "My flute is silent now, and it will remain silent until the mayor and his councillors have made the town well again, have made it a proper place to live. Go back to Hamlin, tell the mayor and all the people from me that if they want their children back, they must make their town a fit place for children to live. Children should not have to grow up in a place where there is no honesty, where promises can be broken so easily, and where greed and wastefulness rule. There must be no more beggars, no more poor, ragged children living on the scraps from the rich man's table." See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.